Kuon, a word with two meanings, a game with two stories. As many-layered as the intricate kimonos of the Heian court, this game is one of the most expensive, rarest, and least understood games of the PS2 era. Pulling on ancient Japanese history and esoteric traditions, Kuon weaves its own original ritual from the pieces and creates a unique tapestry. The story is set in the Heian Period, between the years 800 and 1100. The ancient world was full of superstition and strong religious belief, tied into the very foundations of the nation. The government of the age involved many bureaus and divisions, one of which was composed entirely of sorcerers who read the stars, divined the future, cast magic protection spells, and exorcised demons. They were called Onmyodo, and the magic they practiced was Onmyodo. Developed from the Taoist traditions of mainland China and blended with indigenous Japanese traditions, Onmyodo is a complex system of spellcasting and ritual used to keep the world in balance and to bend it to the spellcaster's will. Nearly all the elements of Kuon's storytelling draws from Onmyodo because its main characters, including Sakuya, her fellow students, their teacher Domon, and his rival Seimei, are all Onmyoji. They aren't referred to as such in English. The word seer is often used instead, but in Japanese, the traditional term is used, and the characters themselves draw from real-world history. Both Domon and Seimei are historical figures, based on Ashiya no Domon and Abe no Seimei, professional Onmyoji who worked for the imperial court and were said to have been rivals. This historical rivalry, composed mostly of short lines of text in ancient scrolls, has become a point of fascination in modern-day Japanese storytelling, starting with, of course, the author who started the craze, Yume Makura Baku, and his novel series Onmyoji. Yume Makura is credited with the Seimei boom of the modern age. He wrote a book series fictionalizing the historical figure's life, a series of magical mysteries with an almost Sherlockian angle in the relationship between Seimei and his assistant. The popularity of the book series, which has been adapted into dozens of comics, anime, movies, games, and more, has spawned a modern genre, with many others telling stories focused on Onmyodo. Yume Makura's works are still receiving attention. An anime was released on Netflix this year, and a new film adaptation came out a little while ago. Kuon is almost certainly part of this Seimei boom. The story of Kuon is divided into two central parts, with a third, shorter epilogue, the Yin and Yang, each associated with a different character. Like the Taoist traditions it originated from, Onmyodo is very concerned with balance and the opposing forces of the universe, the dark and light, living and dead, which are represented by the Yin and Yang. All elements of the universe can be divided into these two forces, including gender and the celestial bodies. The moon and the feminine are Yin. The sun and the masculine are Yang. In this story, Utsuki, whose name in Japanese contains the symbol for moon, is the Yin, while Sakuya, whose role as an Onmyoji is traditionally masculine, is the Yang. While exploring the mansion, the player must solve a handful of puzzles and open sealed doors using magical pieces of cloth. These are named after the celestial bodies. As diviners, the Onmyoji were particularly interested in the stars, using the positions of the planets to predict the future and foretell good or bad fortune. The names used in the game, the sun and moon and 5 of the planets, are those which the Onmyoji used in their fortune-telling. In the Yang phase, the Onmyoji Sakuya and her fellow students are drawn to the mansion by their master, where they face terrible monsters. Their task is to eliminate these creatures and save what lives they can, and the techniques they use mirror real-world Onmyodo traditions. First, the talismans, the paper cards Sakuya uses to summon creatures to aid her. Onmyodo spells are written on long strips of paper, which are then used to cast spells by activating them with certain rituals or words. In Kuon, these spells summon creatures drawn from Japanese myth, similar to the concept of shikigami, a puppet which historically was said to be a creature bound in service to an Onmyoji. Even the method of saving relates to religious tradition. To save progress, the player must have a small paper boat and cast it upon water. In the Japanese version, these are called katashiro, which are a real Japanese tradition. A paper doll or figure is created by a priest, and a person's impurities are transferred to the doll. The doll is then burned or cast into water, and thus takes on the burden of the person's impurity for them. In this case, the two main characters are using katashiro to expel the impurities upon them from their journey through the mansion. The word Kuon is made of two symbols, the first of which is the symbol for the number 9 in Japanese. It's considered an inauspicious number due to its similarity to the word for pain. The director of the game said in an interview that he chose the name Kuon because it had multiple interpretations depending on how you read it, and because the number 9 is considered an unlucky number. He wanted a name that conveyed the sense of horror present in the game to a Japanese audience. Read one way, the word means eternity. Another way, it means 9 grudges. The On in Kuon is the same symbol that appears in Onryo, the vicious, vengeful ghosts of Japanese myth. It can be translated as grudge or resentment, referring to the anger and pain of a vengeful ghost, the reason why it clings to the world and seeks out vengeance. The 9 grudges of Kuon involve feeding a creature the resentment building up in the mansion, which is why we see Kureha, formerly loving and kind, slowly develop more anger and resentment toward her sister, a grudge. The Ku of Kuon, the 9, is meant to be unlucky, but it's much more than an unlucky number. In esoteric traditions, it is a number of power. Taoist tradition associates everything in the world with Yin and Yang, and the number 9 is considered a Yang number of great power. Over the centuries, a tradition developed around the number 9 to create one of the most distinct and unique spells of Japanese esoteric tradition, the Kuji-in, or the Kujikiri, the 9 cuts. The source of this spell is an ancient Taoist text from China, in which a writer describes a way to protect against dangers while cultivating in the wilderness. It involves 9 hand gestures, alongside 9 words, which make a complete sentence in Chinese, and can be translated to mean, "May all those who preside over warriors be my vanguard." It is a spell of protection meant to guard against evil energies, which over the centuries traveled to Japan and became a part of various traditions there, including Onmyodo, Shugendo, Shingon, and Tendai Buddhism. The Kuji-in are a set of 9 hand signs. Each sign has a name and an association with various celestial bodies, energies, chakras, and physical elements. The traditions vary depending on the school of thought, but the concept is the same. You can combine the hand signs in various ways to perform spells of protection, depending on what you are protecting against. It is very similar to the anime Naruto, a set of different hand signs and special words used in various combinations to create different effects. You might guess where Naruto got the idea. Part of the spell is the cross-cutting of the symbol. When you perform the hand signs, you draw them in the air and mimic a sword strike, as if you are attacking. This is done in a grid formation, each line associated with a specific hand sign, and the grid is called a domon, the symbol associated with Ashiya no Domon, the Onmyoji of ancient times. Historically, this tradition of 9 cuts did not exist in the Heian period. Its lineage is difficult to trace, but the tradition almost certainly wasn't in Japan until the 1500s. But as this is a work of fiction, and the Kuji-in tradition is quite famous as an element of Japanese esotericism, it seems possible, perhaps even likely, that the idea was part of the reason that Ku, the number 9, was chosen as a focus for this game, as opposed to, say, 4, another inauspicious Japanese number. The Kuon spell involves sacrificing lives inside a wicker basket in order to revive the dead, or more truthfully, to create a new kind of wicked life. The wicker basket is based upon historical clothes baskets used during the time period, and the concept of lives entering a sealed space and devouring one another, particularly bugs, is similar to a tradition of dark magic called gu. Another import from China, the gu is a type of magical creature, typically a centipede or a snake, but always a venomous creature of some kind. It is created by sealing dozens of animals in one pot together. They fight and devour each other until only one remains. That one is the Gu, now a magical demon who will bring riches to their master and kill their enemies. The Kuon spell works in a similar fashion, and a centipede is mentioned as one of the sacrifices. One of the failed creatures even resembles one. Of course, the central creature of the Kuon ritual is the silkworm, harvested from a special mulberry tree. Silkworms in Japan have been used to harvest silk for more than 1,000 years, going back to before the record of modern history, and mulberry trees are associated with them as the mulberry leaves are their primary source of food. According to the Nihon Shoki, a collection of myths and ancient historical events, the silkworms and the practice of harvesting silk were brought from mainland China by the Hata clan, who were then charged by the emperor with the task of spreading sericulture, silk farming, across Japan. In Kuon, it is mentioned that the mulberry trees were planted centuries ago by the Hata clan, likely during that mythic time in Emperor Nintoku's reign. They aren't the only historical clan mentioned either. Sakuya's family, the Kamo clan, are a famous family of Onmyodo, while the Fujiwara, the aristocrats who own the mansion, share a name with the powerful Fujiwara clan. During the Heian period, the family controlled the emperor behind the scenes, manipulating the court in the dark. The head of the family in Kuon is named Yorichika. His name is similar to Fujiwara no Yorimichi, a historical figure who presided over the family during its later era, not long before the end of the Heian period and the downfall of the Fujiwara. The mulberry trees in Kuon are very unique. They are not normal trees. They do not have mulberries. Instead, their fruits are the silkworms. They originally were sealed by a set of 3 spikes, presuming that not long after they were planted, it became clear something was wrong, and an exorcist dealt with the demons. Exorcism in Onmyodo involves exorcising spirits from people. The Onmyoji would speak to the spirit via the possessed person, usually a young woman, in order to find out what needed to be done to convince the spirit to leave. Other techniques involved using Ofuda talismans applied to the possessed body to force the spirit to leave. The spikes used on the trees are more similar to another type of dark magic, Ushi no Tokimari, a spell in which someone curses another person to death via the medium of a tree. In the early hours of the morning, the practitioner dons white clothes and a crown with 3 candles and enters the woods. Using a hammer and a spike, they strike the tree, embedding the spike. Sometimes an effigy of a person is pinned to the tree as well. The spell is meant to draw the tree spirit to harm the person targeted by the spell. The practitioner comes back every night to hammer another spike into the tree, in essence blackmailing the tree spirit into harming the target so that the practitioner will stop damaging the tree. Kuon adapts the ritual into 3 spikes embedded in the tree to pin the spirit in place. Though how well this ritual works, or perhaps how long it lasts, remains unknown. Though the trees were supposed to be bound, Utsuki sees their spirits during the events on the cliff, perhaps implying the sealing spell had begun to wear off. There are many dark Japanese myths about evil trees. There are stories of trees that drink human blood, trees that bear human face-shaped fruit. These stories all involve demon trees which survive off the lives of human beings. While these evil trees do not require humans to survive, they do need sacrifices in order to spread, to plant new mulberry trees, and all their actions seem aimed at that goal, even sacrificing their own lives to ensure a new tree is born. Silkworm farming has been a controversial tradition, especially in recent times. In the Heian period, silk was used to create the fine kimonos worn by the upper classes, and the poor farmers used silk farming to supplement their income during harder times of the year. To farm the silk, the farmer raises the silkworm, feeding the mulberry leaves, until the worm creates its cocoon. At that stage, the creature can be sold, and then the silk is unwrapped, killing the worm inside. Kuon also involves farming silk and taking lives. It is the motivation behind our central antagonist, Domon. Domon is an Onmyoji interested in becoming more powerful. The silk created during the Kuon ritual proves to be very powerful indeed. It increases Domon's magical strength. Recognizing this, he begins to experiment with the silkworms in the Kuon ritual in order to harvest the silk to use in his spells. That requires taking lives, as the silk becomes more powerful the further into the Kuon ritual you go. Throughout the game, the twin girl spirits of the mulberry trees sing a very eerie song. It is called Hashizoroe, which the Kuon guidebook explains is a ritual celebrating the life of an infant. Once the child has grown its first teeth, the family holds a celebration and feeds the baby its first meal. It is meant to celebrate the infant's survival, given the themes of the game and what the mulberry trees need to spread their seeds. The word takes on an ominous meaning. Much of the lyrics of the song relate to clothing. A Karagoromo and a Maigoromo are both Heian Period sets of clothing. The song also refers to a clothes basket full of monsters, much like the baskets used to create the creatures. The fifth line refers to a Maigadama, which seems to combine the words magai, meaning imitation, and dama, which can mean a lump of flour or clump of meat, in terms of cooking. This may be referring to the creature created by the ritual, a lumpy imitation of flesh, spinning silk thread. The next line includes the word kiraibashi, a term referring to the way in which chopsticks should never be handled, according to the Kuon guide. Since the song's name, Hashizoroe, can be translated as first chopsticks, this likely refers to what happens when the ritual goes wrong. The second verse refers to a shrine path to Toribeno, which is the name of a graveyard at the base of Mount Higashiyama in Kyoto. Kyoto was the old capital during the Heian period, making this likely to have been a primary cemetery of the time. You can never go back, the song says, implying there is no real returning from death, despite the supposed point of the ritual. The last verse refers to a red-ripened koishimaru. According to legend, the koishimaru were a special breed of silkworm which belonged to the imperial family and were used by the empress to create incredibly fine silks. Altogether, the images used by the song, referring to fine clothing which would have been made from silk, to clothing baskets and cocoons, graveyards and lumps of flesh, creates the image of a horrible transformation using lives and cloth, a first meal for a monster that should never have been born. Onmyodo, though predominant in this story, is not the only tradition that appears here. Buddhism is also strewn throughout. These traditions rarely stay completely separate from each other and are often heavily intertwined. The Kuon ritual rarely succeeds, despite the incredible number of lives sacrificed in the mansion. Only one transformation is completed. The rest turn into monsters called gaki, a Japanese term that refers to a Buddhist creature, the preta, or hungry ghost. Preta, depending on the tradition, are the spirits of the deceased who are cursed to eternal hunger, as punishment or because their descendants failed to properly perform the rites for them. The gaki variant is said to be the spirit of a greedy or jealous person, being punished for their sins with eternal hunger. Given the themes of hunger in the game, they make a suitable basic enemy for our protagonists. The names of some of our characters pull from Buddhism as well. The students of Domon all share the Do of their name. It comes from the symbol for way or path, similar to the Tao from Taoism, but Buddhism also uses the term to refer to the Buddhist way, so the symbol can relate to both traditions. Dokai's name in particular uses the Japanese term for a Buddhist precept, Kai, which means commandment, and is used in Japanese as a translation for sila, the Buddhist term for morality. There is also a Buddhist priest in the game named Nyoe. The symbol Nyo is the Japanese translation for Tathata, another Buddhist term. It refers to the ultimate nature of all things, the suchness or thatness. Sakuya, our female Onmyoji, has a Buddhist symbol on her chest. Given what we see, it looks like the Ham, a Siddham symbol which acts as the seed syllable for the deity Akala, one of the wisdom kings, a type of wrathful deity. Known as Furo Myo in Japanese, Akala is very important in Japanese Buddhism and esotericism. He is a guardian, a destroyer of evil. Another Buddha mentioned in the game is Yakushi, who appears in a note inside the Buddhist temple where the sick people were being held. He is a Buddha of healing, making his appearance here fitting. The story of Kuon has many facets and layers, with little details that hint at the bigger elements of the game. One of the most subtle and tragic is the names of its main characters, and how those names hint at the terrible truth lingering behind the Kuon ritual. The Yin protagonist, Utsuki, has a unique name. It's an outdated word that in the Heian period was the name for a month, what we might call April. The old calendar doesn't match up exactly to the modern one, and the seasons, as the historical Japanese saw them, were also a little different. Utsuki, the 4th month, was the last month of spring. A diary in the game, written by Utsuki, uses very specific words that are intended to place the game in a certain time of year. It's confirmed by developer interview in the guidebook. It's done in a subtle, genius way. They use kigo, Japanese seasonal words typically associated with poetry, in order to place the time of year. The diary mentions that irises are blooming outside. Utsuki mentions hearing the cuckoo bird a few times, and another entry says that it is raining too hard to go outside. These are all the pieces we need to know the time of year. A kigo is a word associated with a specific season or a time of season. In the Heian period, poetry became an important part of a court official's life, and it wasn't long before a complex tradition developed around it. Certain words gained certain associations, and the seasons were a major focus. The kigo, the seasonal words, were developed to associate certain weather patterns, animals, places, trees, plants, and more with specific times of year, which could then be pulled upon for poetry to indicate a time, a place, even a feeling in a subtle way. Irises and the cuckoo are both summer kigo, and the rain indicates the rainy season, which in Japan occurs in summer. Particularly, the game is meant to be set in the 5th month, when summer has just begun. Utsuki, our protagonist, has already met her end by the beginning of the game. The 4th month is over, and the 5th month has begun. Her sister Kureha is also dead and gone, and her name is a word referring to the turning of the leaves in autumn, to the process of dying after the summer has ended.